In this video, we will talk about alkanes. What are alkanes? Alkanes, they are saturated hydrocarbons because they contain carbon to carbon single bonds. So in a test quiz, when you are asked what are saturated hydrocarbons, saturated hydrocarbons are those that have carbon to carbon single bonds, and alkanes have a formula of CnH2n plus 2. That is the formula for alkanes, where the N is the number of carbons. Examples of alkanes are CH4, C2H6, C3H8, C4H10. If carbon is 1, C1 with H, 2 times 1 will give you 2 plus 2, giving you CH4 right here. If carbon is 2, C2H, 2 plus 2, which will give you 4 plus 2, giving you C2H6. And that is basically how you are going to get certain alkanes with a number of carbons. Now, how are you going to name alkanes when you are given alkanes? Let's look at the nomenclature of alkanes. Now, to name an alkane, you need to find the longest carbon chain of the compound. Now you may be confused here, but I would want you to hang on for a while. When we are solving the examples, we are going to refer to these steps and you will get it clearer over there. Now you need to find the longest carbon chain, and when the longest carbon chain is found, you can get the name of the parent chain. Now when the longest carbon chain is actually 1, when the carbon is 1, you have a prefix of meth, M-E-T-H, meth, M-E-T-H. When the longest carbon chain is 2, you have a prefix of ETH, ETH. Same with 3 carbons, prop, P-R-O-P. 4 carbons, B-U-T, but. 5 pent, 6 hex, 7 hept, 8 oct, 9 non, 10 dec, 11 on dec, 12 dodec. And the parent chains of alkanes actually end with AN. So when the longest carbon chain is actually 3, you have PROP and we just add the ANE. So it becomes propane. Now we are going to delve more into that later on. Now with the second step, you need to identify substituent. Now whatever group that is not part of the longest chain, whatever group that is not part of the longest chain becomes a substituent. And there are different kinds of substituents. We have 2 types of substituents. We have the organic substituents and we have the inorganic substituent. Let's talk briefly about the organic and inorganic substituent. So taking organic substituents are basically alkyl groups. And alkyl groups, to get an alkyl group, you need to subtract a hydrogen from an alkane. So we have an alkane like CH4. Subtracting a hydrogen will give you an alkyl group. And with the same prefixes, with 1 carbon, we have a prefix of met. And because it's an alkyl group, the ending will take Y. So this is the name of this particular substituent, methyl. And it keeps on going. We have ethyl, we have propyl, we have butyl. We'll go more into that. And mostly the hydrogen that is actually taken are terminal hydrogens. Now, what is a terminal hydrogen? Now, a terminal hydrogen is the same as a primary hydrogen. Now, a terminal hydrogen is the same as a primary hydrogen. And what is a primary hydrogen? Now, a primary hydrogen is a hydrogen that is linked with a primary carbon. I don't want us to get confused over here. A primary hydrogen is the same as a terminal hydrogen. So a primary hydrogen is a hydrogen that is linked with a primary carbon. Now, what is a primary carbon then? Now, a primary carbon is a carbon that is connected to just 1 carbon atom. A primary carbon is a carbon that is connected to 1 carbon atom. So this is connected to 1 carbon atom, so this becomes a primary carbon. This also becomes a primary carbon, and all these hydrogens are primary hydrogens, also terminal hydrogens. So this is a terminal hydrogen, which is the same as primary hydrogen because it's connected to a primary carbon, and a primary carbon is one that is linked with one carbon atom, or that is connected or bonded with one carbon atom. So that is basically primary hydrogens. What is a secondary hydrogen? A secondary hydrogen obviously would be that which is bonded with a secondary carbon. So as tertiary hydrogen, a tertiary hydrogen is one that is linked with a tertiary carbon. Now, what are secondary and tertiary hydrogens? So as secondary and tertiary carbons. Now, this right here, this carbon is actually connected to this carbon. So this particular one is a primary carbon. This right here is connected to 1, 2, 3 carbons, which makes this a tertiary carbon. This carbon right here is connected to 1, 2 carbons, which makes it a secondary carbon. This carbon is connected to just one carbon, making it a primary carbon. Now this is a primary hydrogen. It's a primary hydrogen. This is also secondary hydrogen because it's connected to a secondary carbon. This is also now this is a tertiary hydrogen because it's connected to a tertiary carbon. So as this, they are all primary carbons. So that is just by the way explaining terminal hydrogens. Now the second type of substituent is known as the inorganic substituent. Now inorganic substituent, they are the substituent that do not contain carbon. So chlorine, bromine, iodine, amine, and so forth. These are inorganic substituents because they do not have carbon in them. Now going back to the naming, the third step, you need to name the substituents first in alphabetical order with the least possible number. We will solve examples and we will know what we are actually talking about here. You name the substituent first in alphabetical order with the least possible number, and then if the same substituent appears 2 or more times, prefixes are used to indicate them. When they appear 2 times, you use the prefix di. When they appear 3 times, you use the prefix tri. When they appear 4 times, we use the prefix tetra. And now, numbers are separated by a comma, and names and numbers of names are separated by dashes. And as we said earlier, alkanes actually ends with an ane, ane. Now we will look at special groups of substituents, and whenever you see this, it's an isopropyl. Whenever you see this, it's a tet butyl. Whenever you see this, it's a sec butyl. So as this is a new pentyl. So it will help us in naming some of the compounds we will be looking at. So let's look at some worked examples. How are we going to name this particular carbon? Now we will first have to look for the longest carbon chain. And this is a very straightforward thing because there are no substituents. You just have to find the longest carbon chain. The longest carbon chain here is one carbon here, one carbon here. So every joint is a carbon and every end is a carbon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there are 7 carbons actually in this. And we're looking at the prefix. When there are 7 carbons, the prefix will be hept. So we will just put this down, hept. Just put this down, hept. And because it's an alkane, you add ane. So this particular carbon is known as heptane, simply heptane. We will look at another example with this. How will we name this particular compound? Now we will first need to look for the longest carbon chain. Now we will have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can we also count from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like they are all 8, so we would have to choose one of them. But then I will prefer to choose this particular one. I'll prefer this particular one. So any other thing apart from the parent chain is a substituent. So this is a substituent, this is a substituent, it's a substituent with one carbon, substituent with two carbons. So definitely we know that is going to be a meth. This is also going to be an F because it has a prefix. One carbon, two carbons is an F. But then what is going to be the parent chain over here? What is the name going to be given to the parent chain? It has 8 carbons in the longest chain. So we'll move with oct. So we have an octane at the ANA, octane. And then giving preference to how we are going to count it, you first count from here 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. You wouldn't have to count from the back because this actually is on carbon 2 and this one is on carbon, and this one counting from here 1 2 3 is on carbon 3, and we take preference with the least of the numbers. So we will actually start counting from here 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and now we have 2 over here, and this particular substituent is known as methyl. And looking at here, we have 6 also right here, and this has 2 carbon atoms, so this is an ethyl. So how are we going to name this particular compound? Now in a nomenclature, you name substituent first in alphabetical order. Now with the alphabetical order, this is an E, this is an M. The parent chain will always be last. So naming in an alphabetical manner, we move as 6 ethyl dash 2 methyl octane. So this is the name of this particular compound. Very simple. In the next video, we will work more examples on alkanes, so we will be cognizant with naming alkanes in the future or in our test quizzes. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.